Welcome back. This is Ed with Redneckanize Radio. We're here live every Sunday evening, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. You can check us out, redneckanize.com, or call us up here on Sunday nights, like I said, 7 o'clock, 515-602-9731. We appreciate everybody calling in, listening along. We're also on Facebook Live. We're also on YouTube Live. We appreciate everybody doing that for us and following along there. Make sure you go follow Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel, or both. We appreciate that. YouTube's been where it's at. We've been a lot of videos we get shared on YouTube where we're talking about like life on the road or handling certain situations, understanding certain problems. Again, still one of our most watched videos, and I explained this a lot to the drivers out there at the truck show. The most watched video on our YouTube channel right now every day is just me explaining the interaxle differential, the power divider. It's just not understood enough. And most of the time, the trucking schools, you know, when you go to a truck driving school and you're sitting there in the driver's seat and the guy's explaining everything to you, and he's like, well, that's the trailer brake, you know, aka the Johnson bar. Of course, most trucks don't have the Johnson bar anymore, but they still got trailer brakes. Some of them do, some of them don't. You got your lights here, and you got your, you know, this is just turn signals, windshield wipers, and headlights on off switch and all that. And you look over there and you see this little diagram where it's got two axles and a little X on it, and you're always like, hey, what's that do? And the instructor's like, it's like, that's the power divider. You don't do that. You don't actually flick that switch till you get stuck. And that's all they say about it. They never say anything else. And of course, we find out as we learn, that's the worst thing that you can tell somebody is don't flick this switch until you get stuck. Man, that's the bad answer right there. And that's what we try to explain, and we make sure everybody understands that it's part of the job of knowing, being a truck driver, is understanding how the interaxle differential lock works. We always called it the power divider. And it's probably not really a good way to call it a power divider. People say that a lot, but it's dividing the power between the axles. And you know, and you get a lot of explanations for it. And I'll just tell everybody that there's always power going to both axles at all times. If you're on a flat surface going down the road, 9 times out of 10, every single tire on the ground in your drivetrain, which is the two axles on the back of the tractor, those two axles, they're getting power. If you're on a flat surface and everything's equal, every wheel gets the same amount of power. Now, when you hit like different, you know, textures of ground, or there might be a little bump in the road or whatever, then the differentials between the two wheels on each side, well, they might adjust a little bit, where the power goes to the wheel with the least resistance. That is also true with the axles. So not only do you have a differential, is what the technical term of it is, between the two wheels. And everybody understands the differential. That's where when you've got a drive shaft, it goes right into the center of the rear axle, and of course it's turning both axles. That's your differential. All the little gears inside there are moving to make sure that you've got power going to both wheels. But when you turn corners and all that, and there's this old video where it explains technically using little wood models and all that. Well, when you turn a corner, of course, the wheel that's on the inside of that corner is turning at a slower speed than the wheel on the outside corner. So when you have a differential, the power goes to the wheel that's got the least resistance. And a lot of times it might be the outside wheel gets all the power because the inside wheel is pivoting on that wheel, especially in the big trucks like this. So we understand that's a differential on a single axle. Well, on a double axle, there's also a differential between the two axles. And that is why we have a locker, because if you have a differential on both axles, and we can explain this all day long, and some people still might not get it, when you have a differential on both axles, or in between the two axles, when one axle goes off the ground, the axle on the ground doesn't get any power. All the power goes to the axle that's off the ground. So people see this all the time. When if you're a truck driver out there and you see it, and we all see it, if you hit a bump, or maybe you're backing down a ramp going into a dock or something, or you hit some kind of little like a washout where the curb or the gutter, you know, you got to kind of go up on the ramp or something. Well, the front axle might go off the ground. When the front axle goes off the ground, then all of the power, if you've got it in gear moving, all the power, the back axle will stop spinning, the front axle will start spinning all by itself, and there were no power going to the ground. So that's why we need a locker. And when we lock it, when we do an interaxle differential lock, where you see it on there, lock, unlock. When it's unlocked, everything's moving as it should. When it's locked, that means that it's making sure that the power going to each axle is exactly the same. It never gets removed. So whenever something slips like it is, then both axles will still get power. Both axles will keep turning. So we see this when you're heading in an off-road situation, or you're going to hit a lot of bumps, and you see that. And as a truck driver, that's what you need to do, is you need to see it. You need to anticipate it. You're like, hey, you know what? I'm getting into a situation where there's a lot of uneven pavement, there's a lot of gravel, maybe even snow, and stuff like that, where I'm going to be moving around and I might be slipping a little bit. Then I need to go ahead and engage that power divider, interaxle differential lock. We call it a power divider. Just lock it. And when you lock it, that ensures that all the axles, that both axles get the same power. Now, in the video, I also explain that there are people that have trucks where both axles have lockers. So when we talked just a minute ago, we were talking about the differential in the axle. And when you go around the corner, the one axle gets less power than the other because the one's dragging and the other's not. We have a locker that we can also lock to make sure that both wheels get the same amount of power. That is not really for anything other than when you're technically just off-roading it. If you're going into sand or snow or heavy gravel, that way you make sure that you've got power. Most trucks that have the axle lockers, and that's what we call them. We call them axle lockers. When trucks have that, that means they're probably West Coast trucks that run in a lot of mountains or snow, and that way they can always make sure that basically it's just a four-wheel drive. You know, it's throwing everything in there where all the power goes to the wheels all the time, and you're not going to have anything slip. And we talked about that a little bit on the video. But the main thing is if you're a driver just driving a regular tandem axle truck and you do a lot of stuff where you're going to be on uneven roads or even backing into docks. Backing into docks is probably the most common, where you're going to hit a bump, or the truck, because the trailer sticks up in the air. And if you're on video, you're going to understand what I'm talking about. But you know how when you're going back into the dock and the trailer is kind of going down? Well, the top of the trailer, the front, the nose of the trailer is kind of more off the ground because the road is sloping to level out, right? What'll happen sometimes is that the trailer will pull the truck off the ground, and you'll get a high center on that because of where the straight of the trailer will force the truck off the ground. And what happens is the rear axle will come off the ground because the trailer is actually holding it up and preventing it from going down to the ground. And a lot of times your air ride can't compete or can't keep up, or maybe if it's too much. So a lot of times you'll have to engage lockers on that to make sure you put your interaxle differential in there, you lock it, and that way that whatever axle's on the ground still gets power. Because if it's unlocked, then it's not. So when the truck driving school says don't flick it until you get stuck, that's the wrong answer. And like I said, we got a video on YouTube that explains it in good detail. And again, it is the most watched video. There's a lot of thumbs up. Nobody's come on there and said it's a bunch of crap. So that's what I tell everybody. They say, you're on YouTube? I've never heard of you on YouTube. I should go check it out. Yeah, you should go check it out. And he's like, man, that's pretty good. You're on. How long you been on there? And he goes, well, I've been a little over a year now. And I said, and I'll tell you what, nobody's come on there so far and told us we're full of crap. So so that's a good thing, right? And that, that's pretty much what we talk about here is just how to handle things, being a trucker. Truckers trying to help truckers be better truckers is what our motto has been. So it's been a great thing, and we're excited about that. But yeah, we're just rocking and rolling here. And let's see here. Let's bring our good friend Jeff on. So hey, Jeff, what's going on, bud?
Hey there, Ed. I just wanted to tell you you're full of crap.
Thank you. I know that you think so highly of me that you had to say that.
Well, you just said nobody has ever told you that. Well, I won't be the first then. Hey, when you're talking your inner axle stuff, that power divider, I guarantee you, if you leave your power divider turned on while you're doing your highway, you'll get less miles to gallon.
There you go.
That's because the front and back are both working
right.
together.
Well, and that's always been the other question that people have always said, or the school or a mechanic or whatever. If you go above 30 miles an hour, you'll tear that sucker up. You'll tear it up, and that's just not true. It's not. It's not true.
Right. It's not good on it, but it's not true.
Right.
And then, like my truck, I have the interaxle divider. I have a forward divider, and then I also have a rear differential. Okay. If I turn all three of those on, you're right. It works like four-wheel drive, but they're all locked. There's no slippage. So what's bad about that, you don't want to do that and try to maneuver your trailer, because when all three of them are locked, you can't turn. You just keep going straight.
Yeah, because it makes turning way, way, way more difficult.
It locks them all up. It puts everything. It puts two sets of or four focal points on the ground going in one direction.
Yeah. Yep.
It don't allow that slippage back and forth to allow the steering to work quite well. But I also remember I was on a yard one time, and it was a flat yard, and there was a bump. And this truck got one tire up on a bump. He had to get a forklift to push him off the bump because his lock, his inner axles didn't work because when he with one tire up in the ground, it allowed the one axle the turn, and the truck couldn't go forward or reverse. It was like one tire up, everything else down, and it was like high center on one tire.
Yep, because
what very seldom happens.
Yeah, because what it does not do is that inner axle does not, like you have a forward and rear lock. You still have slippage between the two wheels on one axle, and that's exactly what happened.
If I didn't have that rear differential lock, then it would work. It could happen to me as well. But the way my truck is set up, I can lock the rear differentials and get off that high center because they're locked in.
Yeah, good deal. Yeah, because and like I said, we were talking about that before. Even Greg, I'll bring Greg on here. He's got a few things to say about it. So what we're talking about is people say, don't take it highway speed. You'll tear it up. No, you won't tear it up. You might not get like Jeff says. You probably won't get the best fuel mileage, but it's just gears working, just like everything else. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah. If you're bringing Greg on, he's the master at it. I mean, he's the professional truck puller.
Oh no! Time to get this show on the road, Jeff, right?
Oh my goodness!
Listen, Jeff is right. Jeff is right. It will not. I don't care. Been in this a long time. I got a lot of friends that's mechanics. And father-in-law, clear back through my family, we've always had trucks. Now, Jeff is 100% right, and it won't. It will not hurt that truck to run at highway speed, all right, with the inner axle lock. But there's a couple variables to that. Well, a few, really. First of all, you better have the same size tires on both axles. You can't run a smaller tire on the back, smaller tires on the back axle or vice versa, front axle, whatever, because then you're changing your gear ratio. But as long as you've got the same ratio, 355s, it don't matter what you got, 336, whatever gear ratio you got, both them rears has got the same ratio. So that drive shaft is working clear through both rear ends. They're turning, that drive shaft's turning the same speed through both rear ends. So all four of them axles, all right, all four wheels are turning at the same speed. Therefore, it will not hurt it. But, like as Joe said, you will notice a big difference in fuel consumption. It will use more fuel, because anytime that you start putting a load, you're putting power off that drive line to something else and making something else work. You're taking horsepower away. All right, people don't understand. A lot of it is why, just like oil pressure. That's why a lot of these companies or a lot of these truck manufacturers, when they redone these newer engines, they run at a lower oil pressure. They're running lower oil pressure than what they used to. Remember, the older Cats used to run 70, 80-pound oil pressure going down the road. The older Cummins used to do the same thing. Now, Cummins will run about 40 pounds of pressure going down the road and 20 pounds at idle. That being said, the reason they did that, they opened the oil journals up and made the oil journals bigger in the engines to give them more volume, but they needed less pressure, because it's unbelievable how much horsepower it takes when you start working that truck to take that oil pump takes to pump that oil pressure. All right, it's the same way with everything. It does. And a fan, people don't realize, you don't think of it, but you don't realize how much horsepower that the engine fan takes away from that engine when that engine fan kicks on.
Yeah, it takes
I'm not sure, but I'm thinking they said at one time like 50 to 75 horse just to turn that engine fan. Yeah. I mean, that fan, when it's turning, it don't turn easy.
Right. And
all right, but now there is a difference too between your inner axle, your differential lock, or your inner axle locks, and full lockers, because they've got what they call full lockers too. Now, the full lockers, a lot of times, guys will get them in the heavy haul trucks, off-road uses it a lot. The guys that's doing a lot of construction work or going off-road into construction, they'll have full lockers. What a full locker does, as he said, you can get, I've got my truck stuck right over here on the hill, get ready to leave, snow, ice in the sun, in the winter, I back in there park, go to pull out, I've done it this year. Went to pull out, I get one wheel spinning on the right front and the left rear.
Yeah.
And you lock the axle differential, and that's what the differential locked. It will spin a right front and a left rear, and the other two will sit there. But it's now with a full locker, with the ones that's got full lockers in it, when you flip them, it basically puts both them axles in posi, to where they're both locked in. If the left front one turns, the right front one's got to turn too, and the same as the rear.
Yep.
But they don't put them in most trucks unless I'm thinking it's a special order deal. You got to get them, order them with full lockers.
Well,
It is
we know.
They're different.
Yeah, we know Jeff special ordered his
Because
truck.
on a full locker, now if you're running a full locker locked in down highway speed, yeah, you got a pretty good chance you're going to wear tires, you're going to wear gears, you're going to tear something up eventually, because the least little movement in that steering wheel, them tires are both trying to turn the same speed all the time, and it's just like running a go-kart. If you ever watched a go-kart, or some of these like an ATV, like a quad or something, that back axle is a solid axle. So if the left one's turning at one speed, the right one's turning the same speed all the time. They're locked together. It's like a solid axle.
Yeah.
Well, when you make a turn, say you make a left-hand turn, your left tire is turning slower. The right one's trying to turn faster to catch up, because it's covering more ground than what the left one is in a left-hand turn, or right, or vice versa. So if you've got them both locked in and it's like a solid axle, that right one's turning slower than the left one if you're making a right turn. So what's it doing? That inside tire, that one on the inside, it's turning, it's going to scuff that tire, and that tire's going to be trying to spin while the other one's trying to make up. It makes it hard to turn. It makes it hard to handle. It's almost impossible to make a turn without it's pushing the front wheels, trying to push the front wheels in. So there's all kind of variables to it, but
basically when you're in your normal road gear, when you're the one that's driving it, and the other one's basically freewheeling. It's not driving at all, right. and that's how that spider gear transmission works.
Yeah, that's right. It divides. It puts power to the wheels that needs it.
Right.
That's basically what it does. It puts power to the wheel. It puts power to the wheel that needs the grip. If one starts spinning, it'll put power to the other one to take the spin away from the other one. So I run mine accidentally, because in my truck I don't have a light. When I flip the power divider on, or the interaxle lock, whatever, when I flip the switch on, I don't have a light in my dash. It tells me it's on. If I don't look up the switch and notice it, it can be on and I don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but I did that. I went from here almost clear. I drove it almost clear to Kentucky one time, not for a show, but I drove it from here to house almost to Kentucky, like 300 and some miles with the damn interaxle locked, and didn't notice it. And I got down there, went pulling fuel, and I thought, you know what? And I looked up and seen the switch, because it was dark, and inside the truck I don't have a whole lot of light on my dash and everything, whatever. And I thought, wow. And I reached up, flipped it off, and I've done it. And my truck's got almost 1.7 million on these rear ends. They're original rear ends in that 98, and the only thing that I have rebuilt was a power divider, and I did that about 2 years ago at like $1.4 million.
Mm-hmm.
The power divider, the through splines, and the power divider went in.
I'll tell you one other thing on that interaxle like that. If you don't have a light on your dash, but you have a gauge, if you notice that rear axle that normally isn't running that warm, it'll run higher temperature. You go, wait a minute, what's going on with that? You look down, your switch is turned on.
Right. Yeah, it's neither here nor there. If you're running it, like Jeff says, if you got temperature gauge on yours, which mine does, but when they work, I keep having to change the sensors in it, because the sending units in it, they're right down. They go through the housing. They got two wires, a ground wire and a hot wire on them. Well, the wires from the salt and stuff, it keeps eating the end of the wires off. I got to fix them about every year because of the garbage that I run in up here. But yeah, if your temperature gauges. If your temperature gauges are both running, the same temperature, then yeah, both them rears is running the same temperature. That means they're both working. If you've got that interaxle off, your back one, your back one will be a lot lower than what your front one is, because your front one's doing most of the work.
Yep.
So people don't understand. So it's all what you want to believe, what you think. I mean, you'll have people, they'll agree to disagree with you, but myself, as long as you don't jerk it, you're not banging it, you're not getting it bouncing. Well, just like me, they say, don't use it. I see reports, don't use it over 25 mile an hour, or don't use it. When we do the truck pulls, these guys doing truck pulls, you think they're holding that speed at 25 mile an hour down that track when they hook up that sled? No, not me, and nobody else either. When you put that truck fifth or sixth gear and you wind it up against the governor, when that flag drops and you dump the clutch on it, you want as much speed. You want to get as much speed as you can down that track. Now you got both the power, you got that differential locked, but you want all four of them tires digging. When you go down through there, you want them all pulling, and you want them pulling hard. All they'll do. So I'm not buying that. 25 to 30 mile an hour, because as long as them tires aren't spinning against each other, as long as they're not spinning, they're not jerking against each other, you're not going to tear anything up. As long as you got the same size tires and the same gear ratio in both them rear ends, which you should have. And if you don't have, then you're not right anyhow.
Yeah,
that's the truth. No truck should be running around with two different size tires on the drive axle, or whatever.
But we've seen them. They've done it. People have done it.
Oh, I know.
Yep.
I know, but and companies will do it, and it makes no sense. And then they wonder that's why they start having rear end problems, drive axle problems, running different size tires. The other thing they'll do, they'll take and put brand new tires on one axle, replace all new tires on one axle, and the others are, half or 3/4 of the way wore out. Well, we only need tires on one axle, so we're just going to replace tires on the front axle. Your back axle, you're good for a while. Well, that's okay as long as you're not running like that. But if you start locking that differential in, now you're changing the ratio in that rear end, because that little bit of tread depth is changing the ratio in that rear end, and it's changing the road speed. The two axles are not running the same speed all the time, because that tire that's almost wore out is trying to work twice and turn twice, half again as fast to catch up with them ones that's got the new tread on them. It's common logic. People just need to use their head and think.
Well, so that brings. Well, no, that's a good question. I'm going to ask a good question, I think, which I think a lot of owner-operators out there, they do it all the time. I see it done all the time. I've done it in the past, and it's probably not a good thing, is when you're out there buying new tires, they're buying an axle at a time, and that's not probably a good thing to be doing.
Well, it doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't hurt anything, Ed. Like I said, you can do it. A little bit ain't going to make that much of a difference if you're as long as you're not running that differential lock all the time.
Right.
Because it will split. It divides the power, like I said, to the front and the rear as it needs. It's a little extra wear on the rear. I'm not doubting that. It's not good. I mean, it's just like taking a 4-wheel drive vehicle. If you got a 4-wheel drive vehicle that's 4-wheel drive, that's full time, that you can't, you got everything turning under there all the time. Yeah, if you've got one size tire on the front and a bigger tire on the back, and you start using that 4-wheel drive, you're going to tear something up. A rear end, a drive line, something's going to go. You can't do that, because you got one axle spinning faster than the other one, and that one that can't keep up, that's the one you're going to have problems with.
Gotcha. Yep. Cool. Yep. I think
here's the thing to worry about.
I don't like a lot of people rotate their tires. Every so often they'll rotate their tires. Well, whatever works for them. I'm not saying don't do it. Me, I don't do it, because I put a full set of drive tires on my truck probably 3 years ago now, just about 3 years ago. Now I don't haul that heavy anymore, but my tires right now are still probably half or 3/4 tread, because I don't haul heavy, and I have never, since I put them tires on that truck, I put new tires, new brakes. I keep my brakes checked and everything. Brakes. I've been 3 years since I put brakes on that truck, and they're still better than half of the lining left on them, and my tires are wearing perfectly even. Now, the back ones might be a little lower than the front ones, but it's within a thousandth or two. They all wear pretty even on mine. So I've always got this theory: if it ain't broke, don't fix it.